What's good, YouTube? What's good, y'all? I want to get into this episode right quick. This week's content is all about Jonah, okay? So I'm going to read Jonah 1 today in the NIV. And then I want to talk about the text briefly. The video is going to be titled Jonah 1. But my message is, what do you do when God calls you to prophesy, but the message is not good? Okay? Let's take a look at Jonah 1. Jonah 1 says, the word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. He went down to Joppa, where he found a ship bound for that port. After paying the fare, he went aboard and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord. Then the Lord sent a great wind on the sea, and such a violent storm arose that the ship threatened to break up. All the sailors were afraid, and each cried out to his own God. And they threw the cargo into the sea to lighten the ship. But Jonah had gone below deck, where he lay down and fell into a deep sleep. The captain went to him and said, The captain went to him and said, how can you sleep? Get up and call on your God. Maybe he will take notice of us so that we will not perish. Then the sailors said to each other, come, let us cast lots to find out who is responsible for this calamity. They cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. So they asked him, tell us who is responsible for making all this trouble for us. What kind of work do you do? Where do you come from? What is your country? From what people are you? He answered, I am a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. This terrified them, and they asked, what have you done? They knew he was running away from the Lord, because he had already told them so. The sea was getting rougher and rougher. So they asked him, what should we do to you to make the sea calm down for us? Pick me up and throw me into the sea, he replied, and it will become calm. I know that it is my fault that this great storm has come upon you. Instead, the men did their best. Instead, the men did their best to row back to land, but they could not, for the sea grew even wilder than before. Then they cried out to the Lord, please, Lord, do not let us die for taking this man's life. Do not hold us accountable for killing an innocent man, for you, Lord, have done as you pleased. Then they took Jonah and threw him overboard, and the raging sea grew calm. At this, the men greatly feared the Lord, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows to him. So what I want to let you know is that Jonah's disobedience caused chaos in other people's lives. But they would not have experienced chaos had Jonah been obedient and had Jonah not ran from the Lord. You see, Jonah was told to go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it in verse 2, because its wickedness has come up before me. God had already appointed Jonah as a prophet, but when God commanded Jonah to prophesy, Jonah disobeyed God. Verse 3 says, but Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. He went down to Joppa, where he found a ship bound for that port. After paying the fare, he went aboard and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord. A prophet is responsible for saying whatever God tells them to say. And if you choose to disobey God, God will handle you. And in the midst of handling you, he will also handle people who are connected to you, not because they did wrong, but because they are connected to a Jonah who is disobeying God. Prophets are often celebrities in the Christian culture, and in Christianity, a prophet is so high esteemed and respected because they have a word from the Lord. But oftentimes prophets go through the most warfare because they simply have a word from the Lord. And people need to hear what God has told you to say. So my prayer is that you are not like Jonah. When God tells you to say something that is not pleasing to man's ears. And the reason why I say this is because God is not always going to give you a message. If you're a prophet, God is not always going to give you a message that is pleasing to somebody's ear. God did not call you a prophet so that you could people please. God called you to be his prophet so that you could serve him. Okay? When you serve God, you put your desires to the side and you do his will for your life. My prayer is that even when your calling becomes difficult, you remain obedient. And I say this because it's easy to think you can run from God, but you can't. And if God has called you to do something and you disobey God, he's going to push you into a corner where you don't have a choice but to do his will. Y'all stay tuned to Jonah 2, Jonah 3, and Jonah 4 that's coming this week as we look at how Jonah's disobedience and eventually his obedience impacted people, okay? I pray that you do not disobey God if you are called to prophesy. But I know being a prophet is not easy because you go through a lot of warfare that you don't understand. And it's because God uses your mess to turn it into his message, okay? I love y'all. I'll talk to you soon.